Matthew has been operating in the technology space for about 15 years now, maybe even more. He started his career at Microsoft before co-founding a company called ClayOps, which was a technology consulting company. And he ran that company for a very long time and just recently exited back in March of 2023. And now, to use his words, he's back on the dark side working in a kind of a larger enterprise, kind of continuing to innovate and carry his entrepreneurial spirit and mindset in that domain as well. And so with that, Matt, I'll hand it over to you and you can get us kicked off with the workshop.
Sure, sure. Thanks very much, Sean. So, to begin with, I'm very grateful and very excited to meet people, like-minded people of like data entrepreneurs, and like what Sean mentioned, we connected a couple of months back, and it was a very interesting conversation how it kind of started as well. It started because I was having a coffee chat with a friend, and I was trying to share with them to say that my life goal is to be a data entrepreneur. The feedback I got is there's no such term as a data entrepreneur. So it's kind of pretty perplexed by it. So I decided to go search what's a data entrepreneur, and Shaw's site came up. And that's how the connection originally started as well. So we chatted, we had a quick conversation, and there's this forum that Shaw was trying to work on, and thought that, hey, maybe some of the experiences that I could share as part of the community could be something that can help the rest of the folks go through certain challenges that you might have, and therefore kind of this is how it came about, right? So this is where we are, and this is how we're going to start. I'm going to start moving the slides. Let me know if I'm not that great at Google Meet as well. If I get stuck somewhere, let me know. So my journey so far, as what Shaw mentioned, working probably in the tech space for probably more than 20 years, I would say. Started with Microsoft, doing very much internal work for them, left it, did my own stuff, did that tech consulting, but focused very much on data. So I'm very much analytics centric. Tech is just an enabler from the angle. I don't have a stats degree. I'm not a techie person to begin with. My grounding and where I came from was business admin, marketing from the angle. So I'm very much more of a end user perspective, and that's how the experiences I bring to the table, that's kind of my point of reference as I kind of talk through things that happen and things that we have encountered or I have encountered, and how we kind of address some of that. Okay, so that's kind of the point of references that we have. So I'm not going to use techie algorithms and things to extend along the way. So in my conversation with Shaw, it says that let's break down. If you want to share something about the challenges that data entrepreneurs potentially have, how do we what are the 3 key points? And these were things that I think probably Shaw experiences on his own as well. So that we kind of broke it down to say, let's talk about 3 things, right? 1, communication breakdown between client and potentially business partners as well. Of course, as a data entrepreneur, you have to manage your own financial. So that's the up and down we have to talk about. That's the experience that anybody has to do as an entrepreneur as well. And most importantly, to be an entrepreneur, you got to be able to sell your services, sell yourself, sell your business from the angle. And that's where we want to spend a bit more time to be able to talk through as well. Okay. Being a data person, I assume all data people are very structured people. Correct me if I'm wrong, but let's try to structure this a bit. 3 topics. Okay, we have a total of 45 minutes. So trying to do, if we can, spend 10 minutes per topic, and a 5-minute Q&A. And we kind of see how it goes from there. So I think we're a little bit flexible along the way, and Shaw will keep me sane, and then we can see where we can go from that perspective as well. Okay, topic number 1, communication breakdowns. So that's one challenge that folks have been talking about, and quite consistently across, I think, with any kind of communication or client related work, or even internal business partners as well. That's a very pertinent challenge that we have to deal with. So the thing is, as we do it, what's the first thing we have to do? Ultimately, first to begin with, you expect that it will happen. It will happen. I think when you go in with that mindset, you have the point of view to say, and the stress level reduces. Okay, you know it's going to happen, it will happen, and therefore take it in your stride. Mental model is a bit different, but more importantly is we need to try and double click down a little bit. Says, why is it happening, and how do I therefore address it? Typically, I would like to get to more like nitty gritty in terms of hands-on, in terms of what we can do potentially as well, right? So where does it happen? So my point of view, will be the things that we do as a data entrepreneur, right? Data work, the service that we provide, essentially it's a service, right? We do use terms like a data product owner, data as a product, but if essentially it is something that we roll out our sleeves, we have to do some work. There's a service behind maybe potentially this product. It is essentially, to me, it's more of a service rather than a product. The product is just a terminology to group things together, to take certain accountability. But and from the angle being a service, and it makes it a lot more intangible. What it is that we are trying to do, that therefore raises the first challenge that we all have. The ability for us to articulate exactly what we do, and the ability to therefore use it to talk to the next person who might have a different perspective of what it might be. So that is the first challenge that I see, right? The second thing is difference in terms of understanding terminology, right? The reality is when we try and work with our clients or business partners, everyone has a different understanding of data capabilities. And the reality is we're probably trying to deal with people that are not data people, right? They don't really know exactly what they want, and they kind of have a rough sense, because that's where we generate most value, right? If you're talking to like-minded people, it's going to be a very technical conversation. And is that the kind of work that we want to do, to be able to generate value? Maybe, maybe not. But where I think we provide the most value to our clients and therefore to our partners is when there is that difference, and therefore it's our job to help break the difference. Because of that, we have different understandings. Simplest way analogy to think about it, you talk about business intelligence, more BI related solutions from a data perspective, right? Everyone says I want a dashboard, right? But everyone's definition of what dashboard might be is very different. You've seen dashboards that looks like a dump from a CSV dump, right? And then we have dashboards that therefore look more like infographics, and we have dashboards that don't look like dashboards at all, and I don't know what they look like, right? So everyone, just by using certain terminology, everyone has different understanding, and we need to firstly acknowledge that there is therefore a difference between warm, fuzzy words that people use. And we need to try and double click down to really understand and all be able to articulate better what is it that we're trying to deliver, or what do they want, right? So that's a consideration as well. And like I said, most people that we deal with on the data work, they don't really know what they want. They maybe have this end goal that they want to get to from a business outcome perspective. How to get there, the nuts and bolts, they don't really exactly know. And because they don't exactly know, that's one where communication breakdowns happen, right? They can't exactly articulate. We don't really know how to potentially get there. And because they don't know what they want sometimes as well, one of the challenges they will have is they think it's really easy to do it, right? We've encountered folks in the past where it says that I can get an intern to do the work. Why should I contract you? Why do I need a consultant to be able to come in and do the work, right? Because they think it's easy, and they think it's something that, because of a lot of, I would say, tech vendors will go in and sell self-service, right? Everything can do on your own. That's not the reality in my point of view, but no, that's where we are, and that's where the kind of environment we basically have to work with as well. And the other reality is, because it's a service, unless we have been working with this particular person or client for the longest time, or maybe more than one project, we know the ins and outs of the data, we know the in and out of the system, how they operate. In most cases, if it's somebody we're trying to do something with for the first time, we don't really exactly know what we don't know until we get the work done, right? We may have the process, we may have the steps. Right? For example, we know we need to run the ETL process, we know we need to understand the data, we know we need to define the outcome, but that's very much structural. What is it exactly within there? How dirty is their data? How their data schema potentially looks like, whether it's going to be one-to-many joins, or there's some weird clustering of information potentially. We don't really know until we get it done. And that's where potentially breakdown happens in terms of comms, because we cannot exactly articulate what we're going to give to them, but at the same point in time, they would expect outcome, right? So these are probably the reasons why, the way I see, communication breaks down, because of a lot of warm, fuzzy kind of unknowns from the angle. So how do we deal with this? That's more important bit, right? From a to mitigate perspective, first and foremost, someone on our side, being maybe yourself or someone else, we need to be a project manager, right? Most the data folks that we hear, or data entrepreneurs, we are really great at rolling up the sleeves and getting the work done, but we are really bad at communicating what we want to do how we want to do, and potentially from a project management perspective, be the bad guy to say, I'm not doing this, or this is definitely not our scope. Right. If we don't do that, it adds to our stress and the comms break down, and then it's a slippery slope of more and more. I want extra stuff. It should take extra 5 minutes, and then it starts to go crazy as well. And that's where the breakdown gets worse. So you kind of need somebody to put on the head of a project manager to structure the conversations, to be able to structure what needs to happen by when and what needs to be done from a delivery perspective as well. If we double click that down, because we don't 100%, we can't 100% guarantee the outcome, right? If, for example, you're doing some predictive analytics project, I cannot guarantee an uplift of X%. And maybe there's a threshold to say that I need to be above a certain number, but it's really hard to guarantee anything from that perspective as well. So what we want to be able to try and do is, I want to be able to agree with the folks I'm working with. This is the process I'll be going through. We kind of know the outcome we want to get to, but to get there, I'm going to run 2 iterations, 2 times 3 meetings of 5 hours, and the intent is to do X, Y, Z. So we're trying to get down to one level lower in terms of the process that we're trying to do. Iterations is a good way to articulate that. In addition to that, we want to put some, I mean, if you use some artifacts in front of them, right? We want to put some deliverables, something tangible. We know that it's a service, but how do we make the service real, look a bit more real, right? And it starts all the way from the start of the process, where we want to be very clear about what the problem they want to solve. We put it down on a piece of paper or document from that perspective and get it circulated. And then it helps to stage and build the starting point to say that this is where we want to go and this is where what we want to address, so that when the project starts 3 months, 2 months later, someone will probably forget what was the original problem. We can take this out, and that can reinforce, and that can help mitigate communication breakdown, because there's a point of reference at that point in time as well. Audience as well, the target audience, right? In this, they kind of think about it, there are 2 different dimensions. Who are you doing this for? Whose problem are we trying to solve? And there's another dimension, who's paying for it, right? Those 2 parties need to be very clearly articulated, right? Someone may be person A may be paying for it so they can solve the problem of person B. It may be the same things, and both their requirements could be a bit different. If we double click down what is the underlying win or best practice, or sorry, what's the underlying win, or what's the underlying value that both party wants, it could be a little bit different. But again, with an artifact, for example, a project charter, when you lay all this down, you put it down, and then it helps to facilitate the conversation and articulation about what's the actual problem, what is it exactly do we want to do, and for whom. And that is a good point of reference. Again, there are lots of artifacts, but just to start the ball rolling, those are some things that we need to be able to consider as well. And because it's a process of sorts, use design thinking as the terminology, as the approach. We want to be able to show iterations as fast as we can. Assume the first time you show it, it's gonna break, it's gonna fail, right? So we take a very fail fast mentality. Says, as soon as possible, I will show you all these artifacts. As soon as possible, I will show you an alpha, beta. I'll show you a raw bill or something. I'll just get the data together on just bootstrap in Excel, or whatever that might be, and show you a sense of what it is. Then you can get early signals. You can get early indicators. Are you on the right track? Rather than wait till 3-6 months later when the project is supposed to end, and wow, you give them a big bang. And that's where it's going to be a challenge. And that's where we also sometimes, to mitigate some of these communication problems, especially if it's a first time you're kind of working a project with someone, we do more proof of value projects. We use the term proof of value rather than proof of concept or minimal viable product, right? Proof of concept means it is not in production. They can't really use it. A minimally viable product will have a little bit more bells and whistles to make it a bit more production. A proof of value is just to ensure that the audience, that who are we building this for, and are they willing to pay more money if I move forward and build this further? That's kind of how we define proof of value. We need to be able to ascertain that as the first project before the project gets bigger and heavier from the angle, right? And ultimately, one of the things we need to be able to do, because it's very much a service engagement, it's a consultancy engagement, and we are not them, we need to take a very co-creation approach. We need to get them to understand, come to the table, work with us together, figure it out together. There will be give and gets, there will be compromises, but it's a win-win we're trying to get to. And when you therefore set the stage, it's a lot easier to go through the process and not get it into a communication breakdown, but a communication compromise potentially, or collaborate, to be able to get there. So that's kind of where I think, based on the comms breakdown, what we potentially need to try and do and address. That's topic number one. I'll try and keep every topic to like a couple of slides, and kind of open it up from a Q&A perspective. I think we're doing good for time. Any questions based on what we shared? Your own life lessons, your challenges that you have faced, anything that you may want to bring up. Happy to. I'm looking at the chat as well. Hope maybe there are a few more crickets coming, but
So I got a ton of questions, but I'll just keep it to one. I really liked, everything you were saying, but I especially like the project manager side of things. It's like, technical people are really good at building and they love building and they love sophistication, but that's not enough to be successful as like a consultant or a data entrepreneur. Um, is there anything that you'd recommend, like maybe questions to ask in those early stage conversations to, like, as you said, like structure the conversations in the right way, to ensure that, these communication breakdowns don't happen later? I don't know, maybe if there are like some questions you find yourself like coming back to over and over again in those initial like client conversations.
mm-mm. I would say the first foremost two questions. But the first foremost questions that we typically ask will be, whose problem are we exactly trying to solve? And we got to peel the onion when you have that conversation. It will start broad because again, we're not dealing with data people. For example, if we do, let's say, a project for the finance department, right? And someone will come and say, so whose problem are you trying to solve? They will reply to say everyone in finance or just finance. But then if you peel the onion to say who in finance is probably going to use this, which department, which role, which function, how often, you start to peel the onion and say, actually, is this group of 5 people who do this report on a monthly basis, and this is the report that they'll do, and they got to show this to their boss, and the boss needs to be happy. When you get to that level, it says, we kind of got to the kind of persona level, right? To be very, very clear, who are we trying to solve? Because once we get that laser focused, if someone shifts the target, it's got creep. You need to be able to deal with it, whether you're going to treat it as part of scope or secondary audience or charge them more. Secondly, once you're laser focused, I want to be able to talk to these 5 people to really understand where their problems are, and exactly peel the onion further to say that what's actually stopping them from making their boss look great. Right. So that's the first question we'll typically want to ask. And the second question, which sometimes is not a question that we'll ask in a very open and blunt manner, is based on this particular audience and the problem that you therefore want to solve for this particular group of people, what's the value? How much are they willing to pay? Right. Ultimately, we wanna get paid, and the analogy we have is I gotta get milk powder money to feed my kids. Right. So we need to have that conversation, even though again, from a data working person perspective, we just want to do the work. But ultimately, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to get paid for your work. You're not doing it for free. You're not part of a larger corporation where you get a fixed salary anymore. Right. And therefore, you need to have that more a slightly deeper thought about what is that value, and does that value commensurate to potentially how much you will charge them for. And again, if your internal like corporate, like where I am right now, the dollar value conversation may not come up, but the value conversation is still important. You're going to spend X amount of time to do this, and it's going to solve somebody's problem. Is it one person's problem, and what's the value of that one person's problem? I would say those are the two most important thing I always start off first, because it helps you size, helps you prioritize, helps you identify whether it's a real problem you want to spend more time to fix, or maybe you should take a step back and reframe some of these challenges as well.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to be using that in the near future. Whose problem? Because, yeah, just phrasing it in that way. Whose problem are we trying to solve? And then just keep peeling back the onion, and then getting clever in how you ask what's the value, but ultimately having that conversation. Yeah,
Yep.
it's really good.
Cool. Let me just then move on to the next topic, unless there are more questions. So second topic,
Looks
as
like
it,
we have
hmm,
one
oh, cool.
question from
Oh, sorry.
C32DA.
Yes,
Hi, this is Varun here. So, actually, I wanted to know how do you handle task points or aspects in project like that you discussed with client and you are going to do, but in the course of execution, you realize that delivering that feature is not possible because let's say like the dependency is missing or there's a limitations of framework that client tech is using or anything else. Like, how do you
that's
deal
the
with
tough.
it from a project management perspective?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Again, it goes back to when we start a project, we won't know exactly 100% of the environment that we are in. There will always be dependencies, right? The closer we are to ascertain, the closer we are to understand, essentially we're getting the project done, even the project is done, right? So I would say 70% of the work is really understanding what needs to be done in the granular detail, which means we will never get to 100% until we're done. So therefore, there are kind of two things that we do. One is we try and mitigate along the way by being very clear. And this is something across time when you do a bit more projects or you would have a sense or maybe via the community as well, the hard knocks that we have gone through. So for example, if I'm asked to build a BI dashboard, I'm pretty sure I don't know exactly what are the sources that are coming in, right? Because unless I go peel the onion, open the database, and go figure out where the dependencies and where's the ETL, I won't exactly know. But in my proposal, in what we share, we will be very clear to state what the dependencies and what's the scope. Meaning that I will limit certain challenges or limit myself to say that it's going to be on 4 sources from 3 tables and yada yada yada. So that builds a bit of a box. Yes, the box will be a bit gray. It's open to interpretation, but at least it's better than says yes, I accept, and I'll just do whatever you ask me to do, and then we go down a very very big slippery slope. So it's a bit of a balance between two. Try and find out as much as you can. If not from the angle, then try and limit and box it up as you try and find out what you can. Of course, one way to do about it is to do very very small proof of concepts. Keep it very small, something that you can manage and digest without being able to get into the nuts and bolts of doing everything. So those are kind of the ways that we typically try and do. So someone asked,
Right.
Gino was asking, oh yes, does it kind of help a little bit?
Yes, that was helpful. Thank
Okay,
you.
cool. What are the most common challenges in data entrepreneuring? Uh, um, so I would say it kind of breaks down into those three. One is you need to get paid. In order to get paid, you need to make sure your comms are very clear with your client so that you get paid. You need to be able to, which is the next topic, how you manage your own finances as well, and ultimately how you be able to sell your value. I would say those are the three key things. And kind of we covered one, so we're trying to spend a bit more time on the other two in the next like 30 minutes or so. Hope that helps, Gina. Should I keep going, Sean?
Yeah, we can keep going. That one went a bit longer, but I think we can make it up in the next 2 sections.
Will do. Okay. Thank you. Got it. So next topic is as an entrepreneur, you got to manage your own finances. So there will be instability from the angle. And the main thing you need to firstly, one of the pivots you got to kind of agree is are you providing a service or are you building a product? I mean, there's lots of literature out there about if your service model essentially it's all about getting a scope done well, and therefore most likely you can break even very fast, or just as long as you scope well, you can get paid for your service and you won't be in the red from a loss, from profit and loss perspective of things. If you're doing a product, it's totally different, right? You're burning lots of money up front, and then you try and ensure that you get some viable product that you can go get funds and then be able to build that out further from an angle. So, but my experience or what I spend more time on is very much on the service side. So I'll kind of articulate that a little bit more as we go further. And when we do the service side of thing as well, from a financial stability perspective, the first thing we do is we went back to that Shaw's first question. What do we really need to understand? The value that we bring. That value conversation essentially means I got to pick the right customers and got to pick the right person, right? In the context that we are in, but doing this for like 13 years, and I want to pick, of course, people with big budget. And I want to pick, therefore, typically we'll focus on the Fortune 500, the large enterprises, because they have better budget. So for the amount that you want to do, large local or MNC will probably pay you more than a small local company, a mom and pop shop kind of a thing. The perception of value of data is also different. In a large organization, they use more data, and therefore they will perceive a larger value. Again, what we do is very intangible service, right? From the angle. So that's also important. And the other last point, which is kind of have it on slide as well, is typically with the large entities, the MNCs of the world, they're very good and responsible paymasters, right? They don't, because again, if you deal with your small local entities, in certain cases, they're spending their own money. They're a lot more tightwad about it. And don't talk about, they may not even have a finance or procurement process to make sure you get paid on time, right? You'll be chasing money like crazy. Your work is done. There's a 30 or 60 day credit limit, but they probably extend and you may not get paid until 6 months later. That will kill you from a financial perspective. So try and pick the right client, pick the client that you can do things fast and they see that value and will definitely make sure they pay you for it, right? And they'll pay you on time. If not, it's like you start to get into the rut and the stress comes not from the doing work, but just managing your funds from the angle. Right. The other thing to consider from a stability perspective is the kind of projects you want to take, the really big ones or the smaller ones. Okay, the pros and cons. It depends on the service that you provide, but essentially it means that if you go for really big projects, it's going to be very lumpy, right? You're going to get big buckets of money coming in. Yes, you can probably try and mitigate that by putting certain milestones or payments based on project phases and plans to manage your cash flow. But it also means it's very lumpy when it comes to people. Maybe it's just yourself, because once if you're all sucked into doing a very big project, you probably don't have time to sell or do pre-sales for the next project, which means when your project is done, you probably dry for a while. Maybe you want it, maybe you don't. Then you need to therefore start to panic and or be able to pick up the stress to do the next project, right? So that's one. With big projects, more uncertainties. Again, it goes a bit against the just now the conversation where we're going to keep it small and light. With therefore big projects, more uncertainties, you got to buffer, right? You got to buffer a certain amount from gut feel, 20% or not, to be able to take into consideration things that are not anticipated, and therefore because it's big, there will definitely be scope creep. So therefore, you need the buffer to get the scope creep. Okay, all these cons. If you do a small project, you don't really have to deal with that. But with a small project, the challenge you have is you are constantly hunting, right? You don't have like a 3-year project that you just go in, drop these and get it done. You need to constantly be looking for projects, and therefore that mindset of being a hunter versus a farmer is a little bit more different from the angle as well. So that's one of those considerations you need to be mindful about, and therefore it gives you a better sense of how you forecast your P&L, right? You forecast your revenue coming in, against your costs, be it yourself or a couple of people within your team. So that's something that you need to be able to manage from your P&L side of things as well. Again, like I said, P&L. So if you're a lot of stuff that we do, the services that we do, it's a project of sorts. You need to think of therefore the project. Each project has a profit and loss, right? Each project needs to be profitable, right? If not, you basically need to overlay or put something on top with the next project from the angle. So it essentially distills down to a few different things, right? One, there is a price that you will charge the client. Then in addition, there is a cost to you internally. And of course, ideally, there's that margin and a markup that makes you happy, right? And the cost is actually a variable of two components, right? It's to a certain extent, the effort that you put man days, right? That's the easiest way to think about it. And the rate that you charge per man day. And of course, the number of people you put in, right? As an entrepreneur, what's your train of thought when you go in and you start that business? When I started 13 years ago, the analogy is to say that I have finite number of hours for my own time from a service perspective. At most, I can work 12 hours a day. I don't want to do 24. So for 12 hours a day, how much can I charge? If I have finite number of hours, the only thing I can do is what? Tweak my rate. So, but I don't want to tweak my rate based on my own time. how do I therefore increase my rate in a way, or increase my margin in a way that I can scale? That is the perennial challenge with a services model, right? Because in order to increase your margin, or your absolute revenue, you add more people, but are you increasing your margin? May or may not be the case. Are you being able to scale your rate card from that angle? Probably may or may not be the case. So that's the challenge you need to manage, and it's a very fine balance with cost, price, revenue, and therefore the time and effort required to be able to do the work as well, right? And if you, like I mentioned, if you do scope, ultimately when we do the bottoms up, it's time and effort. Yeah, but when you do a scope, you never tell clients that, and therefore you will buffer. You'll buffer to say that you don't know what the outcome might be. You may want to put in more, and ultimately, if you do buffer enough, and of course the client accepts, then it means your rate card has gone up. Your intrinsic rate card for yourself has gone up if they accept the whole entire thing. And of course, you don't burn more extra time doing the work, right? And ultimately, the other way to look at it when managing project P&L, again, like I said, one way is a very scope-based work. The other way, which is a lot lower risk, is time and material, right? Meaning that you want to get this project done, I will charge you 5 days for X amount of hours to get it done. But the challenge with that, with time and material, is not very outcome-centric. Nobody really exactly knows based on end of 5 days whether you get the outcome, right? Again, we don't know what we don't know until we get it done. The only way, therefore, we can do this is with your clients. I typically don't recommend the first project doing this unless you think it's a very high risk project. But ultimately, the first thing you have to do is you need to have very good trust level with your client. If the trust level is not there, they will be very worried by saying that you actually put 5 man days, but it only took you a day to do because I don't know what data people do, and I think it's very simple. Why are you saying 5 man days? Or they start questioning your efficiency to say that Shaw has 20 years experience doing this. He takes 5 minutes to turn the code, right? And are you going to charge 5 minutes? No. How do you therefore balance the efficiency that you bring and therefore the value that you can put into it as well? But essentially, scope is a higher risk with better margins potentially to be able to scale. Time and material, it's safer, more conservative. But again, because of that, you're limited by your time and limited by your material. So the ability to scale becomes a lot challenge from the angle as well. Okay, that's kind of giving a sense. It's a bit like a finance CFO like conversation from the angle as well. So any questions on the finance part before we kind of move to the last topic?
So since we're running low on time, Matthew, maybe we should just run straight through and do a longer Q&A at the end.
I'll do that. Thanks, Shaw. So the last bit, which is really the most important bit, is in order to balance your finance, in order to get to the communication part, firstly, you got to be able to sell yourself. You need them to be able to want to work with you, right? So that's the kind of the biggest point that we want to be able to go through. So just my personal experience, as we do this for 13 years and we get all the different clients coming in, when we step back and take a reflection to say, how did we got to the state that we are and to the many clients that we have, to the team size that we have, ultimately, my point of view, it boils down to one thing. It boils down to trust, right? You need to build your own personal brand, your company brand. Probably from a services perspective, your company brand is actually your brand, right? Trust is the most important thing. And that's exactly what we ultimately sell. The trust equals the ability to deliver high quality, consistently, and to be able to get them to the outcome that they want to do. That's essentially one of the things that we need to be able to build, right? But how do we build that trust? Okay, again, it goes to the how question. In the first conversation, first time you meet a client, you never met him before, he doesn't know you, he thinks you're a salesman, trying to cheat him and sell him lots of stuff that he doesn't want. What we typically do to build that trust is to be able to share relatable experiences, right? The position that we need to come in from a trust perspective is, again, I'm not a sales guy that will say yes to everything. I will come in from a person that has been there and done the work. Based on the problem that you tell me, I will share with you my own experiences with other clients, with other similar domain or situation in terms of how we addressed it, what are the challenges that come out, and what they need to be mindful of when they try and work on this on their own, even if they don't do it with you, right? When you share more of these, when you provide these nuggets of gold, that builds the trust. And these experiences that you share are not something that you can potentially Google online, right? It's something based on your real life experiences that you'll be able to put on the table and be able to move forward from there. Again, in certain cases, maybe we don't have relatable experiences. That's true. In certain cases where we haven't done the work before, it's a totally new industry, totally new customers, we might not have that. Then what do? We try and highlight certain project references. It may be in a different industry, but the idea is that as you talk through some of them and you talk through how you help them solve down these problems and some of the challenges they face, hopefully they connect the dot and join the parallel to say that, okay, you're actually a doer. I think you can get it done. You may not have done it in my industry, but I think you can because, for whatever X, Y, Z reasons from the angle as well. Okay. The third thing, not kind of as great, is of course show logos. Right. Showing logos is great if you have really, really big brand logos that you can put down. For example, in the past, we used to put down and say, I do work for Microsoft as a client as well. And folks will go, wow, I thought Microsoft had lots of tech. Why do they need a tech consultancy or a data consultancy from the angle? So that helps to promote and helps to build that trust to say we can do it. And of course, logos in a relevant industry will be great because a lot of times they'll be asking, have you done it in a similar set of companies? Right. So that's one thing that we try and put down as well. I try to rank it, right? Relatable experience is the most important. Project references will be second. Logos are kind of great, okay, not exactly great. But again, as you build your journey, as you start as a data entrepreneur, you may not have any of these. It's probably true, right? If you don't have any of these, then what do? The most important thing again is to be able to talk through how you're going to do it, how you're going to approach it so that they have confidence and comfort in terms of, therefore, how it can potentially get done, right? And therefore, you walk them through it. Try and do as much pre-work as you can, understand their industry, understand their data, get bits and pieces of their report, so that when you go into the first conversation, it's not a cold conversation. You have already somewhat warmed them up, so they feel more related to you by saying, oh yeah, you kind of know some of my pains, and therefore you can move things forward. If necessary, I don't typically advocate that in the Singapore context, is we provide a proof of concept. In the Singapore context, when you do this, a lot of people expect proof of concepts to be free. I don't like to do free work because there's no skin in the game. But if you need to, if you can shape it to a really small 2-3 day work kind of a thing, just to show you that I can do it, potentially that's a way that you can move on to try and build that trust and credibility with them as well. Right. The other bit about selling, I think this is my last slide. The other bit about selling yourself is about how are you going to go out and go to market and find all these customers, be it hunting for a big project or a small project from the angle. How we did it in where my company was, Cleops, from that perspective, it was very much a referral game, and that builds on trust, right? So we, and my own internal KPI at that point in time is I need to meet at least 2% a day, right? Law of probability works, right? Like very much a financial services KPI. You need to go, as long as you meet more people, as more people know about what you do, if they trust you, they will refer. And that's where one of the areas that potentially you can explore from the angle as well. Right. Of course, marketing, again, depending on how big your team is and how you go out to market. Services companies, marketing, not exactly that great. It spends a lot of time and effort and don't know where you can scale. One way to do it is to align with some of the tech firms, be it Microsoft, be it Google, be it AWS or whoever that might be, or Tableau, Salesforce, right? You align to them and try and be their best buddies, and hopefully they will bring you out and bring you that customer set. My experience is debatable, right? Depends on how you angle your conversation with them. A lot of times these tech firms, they need partners to do the newest and greatest thing, which nobody else has done, and we don't really know it works. The first version of all tech is a little bit wonky, right? But they do want partners to do it. If you're hungry enough, if you're willing to say, oh, new tech is out today, for example, Gemini is out, I'm willing to POC a project and I can get a customer to build, even though I don't know how to do it, they will love you like crazy, right? But again, can you deliver? Can you get paid? That's a question. It's debatable because I'm always hampered by the delivery mindset to say that I'm worried about taking a new tech that I haven't done before and I can't deliver, and therefore, so that's a consideration for your marketing side. Last bit is who's your value proposition for? Who are you trying to sell to? And it makes a difference, right? If you were to talk to IT folks, in some case in the data world, you talk to IT folks, they don't know what we do. They are more of a, let's get the software licensing in. I don't really care about services. I'll probably just channel you on to the end users. But if they are procurement, they're going to hold you very tight wad because they don't really care about the value of the outcome. If you're dealing with the data team, they know what they want. They probably want team to augment them, and therefore it's more of a technical service capability. Unless again you're coming in with your experience to consult to say that your data team doesn't have the consulting experience, and therefore you can support them to do the consulting. Ultimately, we want to get where we can get to the end user. That's where the value is crystallized, and that's where the value is a lot easier to define. And that's where you should. That's why I think I get excited doing the work with the end users. But that's where the value is most well defined and large enough. And that's where they'll justify it, right? So depending on therefore who you sell to, the value propositions could be different, right? To IT, just get the end user off my back, right? To the data team, it could be I have too much work to do. I just need a couple more guys to help me hands-on and run the code, for example. To the end user, big fluffy gray problems. I don't really know my problem, but I would need somebody to bring me along the journey. But there's risk because I don't know what I want. So it depends on whom you want to go to, and therefore how you want to pitch to them, and therefore the value you want to drive with them as well. Right. I think that was my last slide. That's it. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to kind of do a Q&A. But that's what the 3 points that you wanted to share. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me. Again, we are more than happy to take questions. Or I think it's what Shaw mentioned. This will be published and posted somewhere. Feel free to get the conversations going, right? If from the angle. Any questions that you might have? Thank you for the applause.
I'll give others an opportunity to ask questions because I have I
You
always
have
have
direct
questions.
access. We can speak other time.
Hi, Matt.
Hey.
Hey, this is Manny. I have a question for you. So, how did you get your first client? I mean, the first time when you started, right? So, at that
Mm,
time, like you may be building trust and you may
yep.
not have established anything at that time. So, how you, I mean, what did you
Mm,
do at that time to gain the trust of the client? And how did you get your first client when you
yep.
started? That's one question. And the second question is now in 2023, if you are going to start again, okay? You are going to leave your full-time job and you're going to like start your consulting practice in 2023 to get your first client. What you will do now compared to what you
Okay.
did earlier? So these are my two
Okay.
questions. Thank you.
Sure. So first question, I'll kind of talk you through two ways I address the first question, which is somewhat related. Um, I come from a corporate space, meaning that before this I was Microsoft. My first client was Microsoft. Because you've been there, done that, you know their problems. As a vendor, you can get around politics and bureaucracy and different org roles. Actually, they were my first client, so I did work for them first. That's one way. Of course, not everyone can do that. So, but if I take a step back, my next client is actually my colleagues that have left Microsoft and have joined other companies. And so I spread the word. This is what I do. And because we've collaborated in the past, they were past colleagues as well. They know what we do. They know how I perform, and the trust is therefore there. The second client which I got, the first conversation was, "Hey man, come and help me. You know my problem. Just get it done." There wasn't even a scope. So that's like, to me, that's kind of where I started from, and that started a groundswell of more and more referrals from the angle as we start to do with more people. So that's kind of answer the first question. The second question is, if I were to do it again now, I probably will do the same thing too, right? I will start spreading a message. Every day I got to meet two persons. I will tell them that, oh, can't say that I'm leaving my corporate role. No, can't say that because it's recorded. I'm happy where I'm. But if I were to do it, I'll start to spread the news to say that I'm starting to look out, and I want to be able to understand if there's something we can help you with, and be able to start the groundswell from the angle. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
So we got a question in the chat from Gina. I'll read it out loud. Gina asked, how do you determine a profit rate per project?
Okay, so two ways of doing it. the worker B, which I assume a few of us are, the challenge we have is we always keep thinking about how long does it take to get this project done, right? And that may be a not good point of reference because you want to get paid more. But again, one point of reference, your bottoms up. Your second point of reference that we go is go look at the rate cards of everybody else in the industry, similar capability. That's the second point of reference. When we started, we went and looked at, okay, how are agencies charging for similar work? One of the ratio that we came up with, I don't know if it's still valid, is based off your base salary, it should be 3x. Right. That's usually how the agency charge as well from the angle. Again, that was like 15 years ago. Not sure if that's still relevant. That gives you what's that point of reference. There's a third way. The sales guy that we have, the co-founder that we have, typically will go into a customer environment, and the analogy that we have, he'll look at, wow, it's a marble table. Wow, they have Starbucks for pantry. And then the rate card is affected by that. So he does the upper bound, we do the lower bound, and then we find a middle ground somewhere in the middle. So essentially, it's a bit of how we do it.
I love that. All right, I think yeah, we're right at time. So let's thank Matt again for a fantastic talk and sharing all his incredible insights and experience with all of us. Let's see, we've got a huddle. Our next event is actually on Saturday. If you're so I guess in the US at least, if you're in Asia, it's probably going to be Sunday for you. But we've got a huddle on Saturday, 12 p.m. Central Time. Be sure to come hang out with us if you want to just connect and network with the fellow data entrepreneurs. And with that, let's thank Matt again. And we'll see you in the next one, guys.